It's fun to speculate about lost content, but it's even more fun to play through it. Remember the Pokemon Gold and Silver Spaceworld 97 demo? Yeah, it was cool as balls and gave us an idea of what could have been had Generation 2's original plans gone the way that Game Freak wanted at first. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll ever get our hands on a complete official version of that. But that's fine, because here comes Pokemon Gold 97, a ROM hack of Crystal version created by Level 3. Gold 97 takes the remains of the demo, cleans them up, and turns it into a fully playable new adventure by mixing it with the events of the final versions of Gold and Silver. And the results are pretty great. Like the Speckle of story in the Spaceworld Demo, Gold 97 begins with the player receiving an email from Professor Oak, requesting your presence at his lab. Leave your room, and Mummy gives you the usual Pokegear, Day of the Week selection, and also the choice to name your rival. Do your best. Now go outside and meet Silent Town, where you're greeted by this absolute penis head of a rival who brags to you about how Professor Oak called him to his lab, just like you. Take that, you little shit. But the professor isn't in his lab, so it's time for Pokemon-assisted suicide. Blue stops you before you get euthanized and brings you to the lab, where the professor is now waiting. He explains that he gave two boys from Kanto a mission to gather information on all existing Pokemon, but it turns out that there are many more waiting to be discovered here in the region of Nihon, because of course it's called that. Professor Oak is getting too old to do it himself, so he entrusts you and your rival with researching the Pokemon of Nihon. To get this new slave ring in gear, you get to choose one of three starters. The Fire-type Flambear, the Water-type Cruise, or the Grass-type Happa. And now you're ready to conquer whatever comes your way, starting with your rival, of course. The humiliation begins. And so does your journey through the lost region of Nihon, coupled with a ton of educated guesses and restructuring of actual things that happen in the final games. The interesting part about this ROM hack isn't the gameplay, which is just about what you'd expect. What can I say really? The mechanics are pretty much just the ones in Vanilla Generation 2, so if you want a more thorough analysis of that, you can check out my video about it. You have one-on-one turn-based battles, you can use items or switch Pokemon, you can run like a pussy, you have 6 base stats and held items, etc. Don't come looking for the physical special split or abilities and natures or effort values in here. Then again, that last part is probably for the best. The key changes are that updated moves, such as Bite, use their Gen 2 types, while Pokemon use the Spaceworld Demo ones. There is also an option to use the final type chart or Space Worlds, the latter of which includes things that would likely raise a few eyebrows today. It also adds all the lost Pokemon into the game, with original Pokédex entries and cries, fully functioning evolutions, and stats and movesets based on what the author figured would fit, since the Spaceworld Demo didn't have everything. The Pokédex entries were just placeholders, for example. Pokemon that didn't exist in the Spaceworld Demo also aren't present in this ROM hack, so if one of your favorites got the boot, well, tough luck. And with that out of the way, let's talk about the interesting part, which is the experience as a whole. The first thing you will notice is the colors, which look like a Game Boy game running on a Super Game Boy or a Game Boy Color. But it's not. And Crystal is color exclusive anyway. As you might know, Gold and Silver were originally planned to be Game Boy games with Super Game Boy enhancements, but the final releases were intended to be played on the Game Boy Color. The only thing to complain about here is that it still uses that god-awful green palette during the night. Making the graphics use these limited palettes adds to the authenticity and exoticism of the experience. This is further enhanced by the alternate sprites or even noticeably different designs of the Pokemon that we know today. And anyone who has played both Generation 1 and 2 can tell that there is a difference in the art style used for the sprites. Oh, and there are no animations, obviously. And yeah, it's a silly thing, but the fact that many of the assets came directly from Game Freak's staff adds another layer of authenticity in my head. That's not to downplay fan-made Pokemon games, because there are some really nice ones out there, but these towns, these buildings, these sprites, everything could have very well been part of the Pokemon canon at one point, for better or for worse. Of course, not all Pokemon had updated sprites yet, which makes it a bit of a Frankensteinish mess sometimes. Some of them could pass as Gen 2 sprites if they were colored, but others look like they came straight out of Gen 1, for all kinds of reasons. The author also deliberately kept the story simple, just like Generations 1 and 2. Other characters show up every once in a while, but for the most part it just leaves you free to piss around however you like. The story doesn't play an active role, it's just there for you to discover it. And something to keep in mind is that Gold 97 borrows a lot from the final games, and I don't mean just the entire soundtrack. The dialogue with Falkner and Kurt in Old City, for example, is very close to the dialogue with Professor Oak and Professor Elm about how the player has potential and all that. The Honto ruins are basically the ruins of Alph. The Slowpoke well has a different layout, but Team Rocket are still there slicing the tails of poor lazy Slowpokes, and they will still take over the radio tower. The feeling of deja vu grows stronger the further you progress. But at the same time, you're also going to see a few bits that don't match what's shown in the release versions, like some gym leaders having different designs. Morty uses his original concept name, Jasmine seems more energetic and has cute twin tails, and Whitney isn't a trend-chasing thought anymore. Gold 97 also takes some liberties, like Ken just being a DJ on the West City radio tower, while in the demo, Ken was the name of the player's brother. Maybe he was also supposed to be a DJ, but who knows. Regardless, this mix of Super Game Boy enhanced graphics, the mysterious world that was supposed to represent all of Japan at one point, the unused Pokemon and story elements, combined with the Gen 2 mechanics, Gold 97 is almost like a missing link. A lost Pokemon game that never saw the light of day. However, it's based on an unfinished game, so certain locations do feel rather bare bones. The 5-floor tower is just 5 squares with a bunch of trainers. Some gyms might as well just be a straight line, and certain routes are very short with simple layouts that make them feel like an excuse to have some trainer battles. A lot of water areas seem like they might lead somewhere, but are blocked just a few steps away. Kanto is also squished up into a single city because the original plan was to have a region representing all of Japan, and Kanto is only a small part of it. Speaking of which, some of these names are just... no. And because of this, Nihon isn't as interesting as Johto, which vomits personality wherever you go. And speaking of unfinished, it's pretty friggin' clear why the 2 new types were changed so much. Pokemon like Rinring are borderline useless because Dark is not only weak to itself, but also to normal, and practically every single Pokemon knows at least one normal type move. Dark wasn't completely immune to Psychic either, so it doesn't even have that going for it. Gold 97 also still suffers from an awkward level curve despite being more linear than the final games, with trainers falling behind in levels starting with the 4th badge. This keeps going until the Elite Four, with my party being around level 45 when I beat the champion. Thankfully, no level 3 Rattatas after the credits. Oh right, did you know that Gold 97 features a completely new post-game area? Because it does. Regardless, I can't fault the creator for some of its problems. It's just how it goes when a game is under development. Game Freak tried new things and saw what worked and what didn't. Maybe that's why so much of the work seen in the demo was tossed into the garbage. Maybe things just weren't going according to plan, so Game Freak revised it all. Again, a lot of things in this ROM hack aren't official in any way. Nobody knows what was supposed to happen in the 5-floor tower, or in the Honto ruins, or anywhere else really. but I think the creator did a good job connecting the dots between the lost and the canonical, making the whole thing feel very authentic. And ultimately, that was the goal and my point all along, wasn't it? And it's because of this experience thing that I recommend you check it out if you're interested in the mysteries left behind by the Spaceworld Demo.